Evening, folks. Well, many years ago, I wrote a story, but that's not the story I'm going to tell you here tonight. Instead, I'm going to tell you how the story came to be written down, because that in itself is a tale worth telling. I guess it all goes back to 1979, because that was the year that the Chinese authorities opened up Xinjiang province to the outside world. And for the first time in decades, journalists from the West go in there and look around. Well, the National Geographic Society took advantage of that opportunity, and they sent in a team of journalists and scientists and photographers, and they came back with tales of ghosts amid ruined cities and bygone civilizations, and the old Silk Road winding along the Taklamakan Desert against these snow-covered mountains, and these ancient oasis towns that are set along the old Silk Road where the Uyghur people live, these famous silk-weaving people that have lived there for centuries. And a result of that expedition, I'm going to show you now. This is the cover of the March 1980 edition of the National Geographic magazine. And on the cover, you see this wise, wistful, kind-looking Uyghur man looking into the camera. And more than the stories, this image really left an impression on me. I didn't know just what a big impression it was going to leave. Well, this image stayed in the back of my mind for years, and it was as though it gave me a sense that there was some unfinished business that I needed to attend to. That expression, it made me think of a line from out of Ecclesiastes in the Bible. You know, the line that goes, "For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow." In the spring of 1986, I took a notion to write a story inspired by this image I'd seen on the cover of this magazine. So for the next 5 years or so, I haunted the libraries, undergraduate stacks, and looking for research material on the history and culture and geography of Central Asia. And meanwhile, I'm trying to write this story, and I'm having a hard time with it. Writing maybe 3 pages a day, longhand. And that's if I'm doing well. I was not happy with the result. All of this changed in July of 1991, because that was the year that a friend of mine visited me. I was living up in Maryland, came to visit. He'd been in touch with our 5th grade teacher, and he had her address. And he suggested that I write to her. And I did. I wrote her a long, newsy letter trying to catch up on a quarter century of events. I heard that she had gone back to teaching 5th grade class. And so at the end of the letter, just as kind of an afterthought, I included an animal riddle. And it was sort of automatic writing. It just came to me all by itself. It was a rhyming couplet. The animal is speaking in first person. And the clues it gives challenges you to guess which animal is speaking. Well, on the way to the mailbox, more of these riddles appeared. And it just kept on going for the next week or so. This zoological parade of animal riddles came marching out of my head and onto the paper and into my memory. I remember them to this day. They live in my head. I don't know why. So I was in a rhyming mood at the end of that week. I was on a roll. In this rhyming mood, I turned my attention to this writing project, this story I'd been having so much trouble writing. And that's when something very curious happened. The same entity that had been supplying these animal riddles just took over. The muse, no other name to give her. She just took over and she tossed my prose manuscript in the trash and just appropriated all my research material. I spent 5 years gathering and wrote a very different story from the one I'd been writing. And in the strangest way, like over another week's time, this verses just came tumbling, just rushing and tumbling out of my head. Wherever I happened to be, I might be driving or working or in the shower, and whenever I could get to a scrap of paper and a pencil, I would write it down. And so this verses collected over the week, and scraps of paper, paper bags, even scraps of wood because I was doing carpentry work. At the end of this week's time, I had this strange hodgepodge of completely uncollated verse. I wish I still had it. It's an amazing, it would have been a weird looking document. And wow, I've got it. I dealt it out on the bed. Okay, this goes, that goes, trying to get the sequence because they're from completely random places in the story. So I dealt them out and I found the sequence. That goes there. And then there were blank spots. I found some blank spots. As soon as I would find a blank spot, the missing verse would arrive in my head. I would write it down. I would put it there. And that's how the core of the story emerged, about 80 verses long. And I thought that it was complete. Amazing process. Little did I know then that this process of missing verses and arriving and taking their place like some late choir member, it would go on for the next 20 years until it had grown to 3.5 times its original core length. Well, I thought it was complete, so I thought, I've been given a strange gift. I should bring it to its intended audience. So I started writing to literary agents. I kind of figured that they wouldn't respond very enthusiastically. But I figured if nothing else, I would learn something from my interaction with them. So for 2 years, I wrote to the agents until I had been rejected or ignored by over 300 literary agents. And it had a curious effect that the muse seemed to enjoy even the rejection. More and more verses would appear. But there's something else I learned along the way, and that is, don't tell just anybody that you're even writing a story, because almost invariably this response would be negative, ranging from uncomfortable silence to open ridicule. Well, over the years, this went on for years, and over the years, as the verses arrived, I found I did have a few friends among my many detractors. When I moved back to Austin from Maryland in 1994, I joined a local writers group. And for 2 years, they helped me critique my manuscript, about 15 verses a month. I'd print up some pages and they'd mark it up. And their criticism and comments and questions were very helpful. The muse worked very well with this group. Their questions inspired whole rounds of verse. It was a very productive time. Okay. Well, in the meantime, I'd give it up on the agents, okay? Yeah. But I kept writing to editors and publishers, and of course, invariably, they dismissed it out of hand as completely anachronistic, completely unsaleable. What was I thinking? But I kind of had a sense that it wasn't simply prejudice within the publishing industry against this genre. Something bigger was going on. And what really gave me a clue was the average response from your average person. And this is what it is. Our modern culture, we are used to getting our stories primarily from two storytelling giants: television and the movie industry. And they are very jealous behemoths that do not take kindly to a pipsqueak rival like myself. I knew that I was going to need some help. This eventually arrived in the form of online publishing. I transformed my little bedroom into a primitive sound studio, and using my Mac, I made a digital audio recording of myself performing from memory The Demon of the Well, because like the riddles, it's in my head. I'm like one of those people at Fahrenheit 451. So anyway, I sent it off to CD Baby. They quickly had it up and available through major distributors, Amazon, etc. And not long after that, ebooks became very widely available, very easy to do. So I did a version of that. I want to show you something else. This is the cover art for the ebook version of The Demon of the Well. It was illustrated by my nephew David, and it looks an awful lot like the artist himself, except for the tangle of horns and the knobby yellow skin of the demon. So, I have these two versions of my story available on the World Wide Web through every major distributor on the planet, which is where it languishes in quiet obscurity. And as I've said, this is because of the two giants. Not only do they control the gatekeepers of the publishing industry, they have a lock on the mind of modern people. It's hard to get past that. Decades ago, when I first received the story, that first exhilarating week when the verses rushed out of my head, I knew I had something special. I had this feeling that this story, it could outlive me by many centuries. I feel that strongly about it. I thought, well, all I need to do is just tell the story to its audience. And I've come to realize now that what would seem to be a simple enough commission is much greater than that. Because in order to bring this story to its intended audience, I would have to change the storytelling culture of the entire civilized world. So, that's what I'm doing. But the struggle has taken its toll over the years. I've grown tired, and I'm afraid. But I also revel in the thrill of the unknown. The way ahead is undiscovered country. I don't know what lies ahead of me, but I do know this. All of you here tonight, every one of you, is now a part of this story beyond the story. And I am grateful for your company.